We're looking at a world that continues to simmer in the direction of conflict that is tearing nations apart. Who's going to win? Will the nationalists win that love their nation, or will the globalist Marxists win? In Israel, we're going to be looking at the extreme battle that is going on in the court and understanding how it reflects in the battle in the United States. We're also going to be looking at the American cities. Amazing data coming out on the collapse of our cities under Marxist Democrat administration. And then we're going to be taking a look at why Mexico has a problem with Texas because we're not receiving their illegal immigrants like we used to. Let's go ahead and take a look at all this and more on Prophetic Convergence. Welcome to Prophetic Convergence, the show or the news format that actually analyzes current events happening in the world that are of critical importance to believers that are utilizing the scriptures as a lens to interpret end-time realities. We're watching the era, Barry Segal in Jerusalem is joining us. We're watching the era of tares and wheat rising up together. Jesus preached this. It talks about a period of time when seeds that were planted come to full maturity. And what we're really looking at in the United States, and I think in Israel and in Europe, is the full blossoming of the seeds of the liberal, anti-biblical doctrines that are finally coming to full maturity. And what we find out is that, like the proverb says, that you can't dwell in the same house with a woman who is strifeful. We're finding that domestic peace is virtually impossible with this new breed of political engagement, which is extremism. I think in Israel, you have the problem of the Orthodox on the right that is far more out of control, certainly, than what we have always hear about right-wing extremism. We don't really see those riots happening in America, but my gosh, you've got the religious, the super religious are hostile to Christianity, and they're in Netanyahu's party, and it's part of the problem. Can you explain to us a little bit about what makes up Netanyahu's government right now?
Yes, of course. You know, I have to say, in all due respect to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, this is a man who sacrificed, gave his life in service in the Israeli military. He was part of the Sabina aircraft. There was a hijacking of which he was in the military unit that took down the hijackers. And of course, we know Yoni Netanyahu, his brother, was actually killed in the Entebbe raid. And that's very sad. And of course, there's a lot of history behind the family. He has been referred to as kind of a modern Churchill in Israeli history. Of course, when he also smokes cigars, it makes it even more that way. But he's been a great statesman on the world stage. He's been willing to stand up to U.S. presidents, stand before the United States Congress and Senate and the United Nations and expose Iran and their nuclear program. All those things are wonderful merits that go into his court. However, the problem in Israeli politics is we are a parliamentary government, and the ruling coalition has to find partners in the government that they can get a majority of at least 61 and over in the Israeli Knesset out of 120 Knesset members. And right now, that means that there are 64 members sitting together with Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition, and the ones that make up a large part of the right religious bloc are actually pulling the strings, both the purse strings, financial strings, as well as the policy strings. And this has played into the whole situation of the judiciary reform bills and legislation, and how the budget is being spent and voted on, and of course allowing the ultra-Orthodox to call the shots in the Netanyahu government. Now, trickle that down to everyday life, and there are just so many things going on. But let me give you one example so that the Christian evangelical audience will understand. Recently, we've seen an upsurge of attacks against both Christian religious sites and priests and nuns walking in the old city, being spat upon by ultra-Orthodox. This has been in the Israeli news. I'm not saying something that hasn't been in the news here. Or we've seen attacks against Christian evangelicals and Messianic Jews, not Messianic extremists, but I'm talking about Jewish believers in Yeshua, Jesus as the Messiah. So we've seen a rise in these attacks in Jerusalem especially. And so this is being propagated by this extreme ultra-Orthodox segment through certain organizations that some are more violent than others, anti-missionary groups. And so I'll just give you one example before we move on. We have a mutual friend who was bringing a tour group and has brought tour groups to help the economy of Israel. A Zionist at heart, has been blessing Israel through his tour groups. He's Jewish, but he happens to believe in Yeshua. He was detained not so long ago at the airport and interrogated for about 7 hours and was only released to be with his tour group with about what I heard, and I'm just saying what I heard, was 100,000 shekels bond in order that he would not stray from the agenda or itinerary of the group and that no evangelistic activities would take place. And this is increasing, and this is where I'm concerned about the direction of this populist kind of government that we've referred to, and, you know, fighting against the globalist kind of agenda. But at the same token, we have to understand that the extremist element in this present government is being somewhat pulled by the ultra-Orthodox parties. And so that's something we all need to pray about and be concerned about in reality.
Well, you know, I have a kind of a simplified way of looking at all this, Barry. What I like to see is Netanyahu's reforms take place sufficiently so that the Supreme Court doesn't become what the Democrats want the Supreme Court to be, which is a rubber stamp for the secular globalist agenda that is working against even the prosperity of Israel itself, which is what our Marxist government does. But I'd like to see that reform happen, and then I'd love to see how the left, center, and majority of the right can curtail the excessive zeal of the fanatical 21st century Pharisees that hate everybody except themselves. And I think that's possible. Both things are possible. But I want to share something with you, how media in the United States, and this is very important in our remaining couple of minutes here, how media is telling the story of what's going on. I almost have this attitude. You know, I'll tell you the truth. I have a really bad sense of direction. I'm really brilliant in doing analysis of geopolitical and economic stuff. But when it comes to practical things like driving, my instincts are always to turn right when I should turn left. I've got to the point where when I'm getting lost, I ask which direction do I think I should go in, and then I do the opposite, and typically I'm accurate. So every time I hear the Democrats upset about something Netanyahu's doing, I have to assume he must be doing something right. And they don't like what he's doing right now. I'll tell you right now. The media is trying to be sympathetic to the protests. So I know Israel is on the right track. I'm going to show you a typical segment. And it's completely set up by American News Analysis. Go ahead and play the clip.
Israel's shekel continues to weaken as protests erupt in Israel after Parliament passed the first part of Benjamin Netanyahu's judicial reform bill. In a 64-0 vote, Netanyahu's far-right coalition is one step closer to limiting the Supreme Court's powers and eliminating checks and balances. After the bill was passed, Netanyahu said he would seek dialogue with opposition leaders who boycotted the vote after the 30-hour debate and will try to reach an agreement.
We do have an agreement. We all agree that Israel must remain a strong democracy, that it must continue to protect individual rights for everyone, that it will not become a state of halakha, that the courts will remain independent. I would like to emphasize this again. No party must take over the court. It won't happen on our shift.
The United States has called the passing of the bill, quote, unfortunate, after President Biden earlier called for Netanyahu to compromise on the legislation. Israel's 7-month battle over the proposed changes have sparked major protests, drawing in the military reservists, union, and medical professionals.
The language that was used, Barry, trying to curtail the Supreme Court, trying to keep the balance of power from happening. It's the exact opposite, actually, because the administrative state has such a handle in the Supreme Court that the nation can't even govern itself because things are arbitrarily overruled based on the politics of the Supreme Court. It's kind of like, you know, in Brazil. All of this is connected. They took Bolsonaro. I don't believe he was, I believe election fraud pulled him out, just like in the United States. But I'll tell you what, the Supreme Court in Brazil packed sufficiently, let Lulu out of prison so he could run against the president, Bolsonaro, and win. When you got the left in charge of voting and the courts, baby, look out. We'll be right back in a moment with Prophetic Convergence.
Over the last 20 years, with all your support, we've been able to not only launch the original MyPillow, but also the MyPillow mattress topper, Giza Dream bed sheets, My Slippers, and the MyPillow bath towels. But there's so much more. In fact, we have over 200 products, and I'm so confident that you'll love each and every one of them that when you go to MyPillow.com now, you'll immediately receive a free gift valued at $20 just for checking out the website. No purchase necessary. Get everything from MyPillow blankets, sleepwear, kitchen towels, mattresses, duvets, pet beds, body pillows, comforters, couch pillows, bathrobes, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And remember, just for checking out MyPillow.com, you'll immediately receive a free gift valued at $20. No purchase necessary. This is a limited time promotion, so go to MyPillow.com now.
Go to MyPillow.com and use promo code Lance to save big on all of Mike's best products. That's promo code Lance.
I'm interested in the perspective of Barry, the objective focus of the Middle East looking back at the United States. It seems to me that our Marxist progressive mayors, we just rotated Lightfoot out in Chicago and got a new guy who's even worse, it seems. The data looks as though the cities are in an absolute free fall in terms of crime and an economy. And I don't understand for the life of me why the people keep voting the Democrat Party back in. I'm sure that someone could give me an enlightened perspective, because the voting population also are taxpayers, and they're the ones that are suffering the most unless they move out. What's your assessment, Barry, from your perspective on the major cities?
Well, you know, I come from what was a major city, Detroit, known as Motown, but so many people have left that they don't even have enough tax revenue to support the city anymore. And places like those who are from Detroit originally, Old Greek Town, which was a popular place even recently to go to when I was there for my mother's funeral back in April, sadly to say. I wanted to go there with some relatives in my family, and they said, no, you can't go to Greektown anymore because there's shootings every week. And I thought, I can't believe it. Well, Detroit has been a long-time example of what social Marxist democratic left-wing policies have done to ruin a city and have allowed corruption to take prominence. But then we have Chicago the same way. Lori Lightfoot, who's no longer mayor, and then the people or whoever elected this new mayor, Mayor Johnson. I mean, just a couple weekends ago, another 30 people were shot over the weekend, a couple weekends back. And between January 1st and July 22nd in 2023, already 328 people have been killed in the streets of Chicago due to shootings. And so sadly, oftentimes it's happening to people who are just driving their car late at night, or a child gets a ricocheted bullet through a window and it kills them. And you know, all these old songs of Chicago, Chicago, da 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 da. I mean, this was in the heyday when these cities were looked at. Look at San Francisco. An article recently said that Walgreens has chained its freezers and shut after shoplifters are robbing the store 20 times a day. And that's already after Walgreens has shut down many of its stores. We know this is happening to retail stores over and over again, and workers that try to stop these thieves, these robbers are being fired because they're trying to uphold the law, so they're being told not to do it anymore. How stupid it is that any retail chain would even keep a store open anymore in downtown San Francisco. And then you remember the words of Tony Bennett, his great song, "I Left My Heart in San Francisco." I think people should leave totally San Francisco at this point. And then what about Frank Sinatra's song, "New York, New York," you know? It says, "I want to wake up in a city that doesn't sleep and find I'm the king of the hill, top of the heap," but now it's the top of the garbage heap. I just don't understand how these voters are continuing to vote these terrible policies. It's crazy.
You know, Barry, I think that I've never seen anybody that comes more alive when they sing songs on the news than you. You can hardly suppress your joy when you start giving a melody tied to the news. You ought to do a musical news broadcast. I think it would be a viral hit. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, it isn't the top of the heap, it's the top of the garbage heap. And Tony Bennett is right. He left his heart in San Francisco. Unfortunately, people are leaving their money in San Francisco. They're leaving it. So I'm thinking that this kind of ties into something else, and it's kind of a strange segue, but I want to talk about Chicago. And this is going to be a rare prophetic convergence breaking news theory. I talked with a prominent journalist and Washington insider who said to me, "Why do you think they're doing the Democrat National Convention in Chicago, Lance? Since it's the crime capital, it's hardly the crown jewel of Democratic management. They don't care because the news isn't going to cover what a cesspool Chicago's become. They're going to make it all about the DNC. It's going to be, you know, going to be theater in the news." He said to me, they're going to nominate Michelle Obama for president. Now, I want you just to think about this, people. I'm not saying prophetically that's going to happen. I'm saying this is what was told to me. They picked Chicago because they believe Biden is not going to make it in the impeachment scenario that he's under, and that long before he gets put out there and is trotted off because of criminal activity, he's going to have, you know, a health issue and then sympathetically resign because he's not able to function in the way that he wants to. And Michelle Obama will be president. Gavin Newsom is the one that they would like to see at the top of the ticket. She is Nancy Pelosi's nephew, I believe. And so it's all dynasties. And so they want to get Newsom in line. He could possibly be at the top of the ticket with Michelle as a running mate. There's the Chicago again, the reason why this is important. And then Kamala Harris may become the governor of California because Newsom can appoint that. What I'm saying is they could lock up Trump. They could run Michelle Obama on the ticket. All things are possible in the chaos of what's happening in United States politics. And I'm throwing it out there now because I really want to see your comments. You guys tell me what you think. Do you think it's possible that they know Kamala Harris can't make it on the top of the ticket, that Biden is cooked, and that they're going to try to run popular Newsom and Michelle? Imagine a Gavin Newsom, Michelle Obama ticket, if that's the case. It puts Barack right back in the White House. Oh my gosh, you've got central casting, bringing all the main characters together to cook things up. How absurd does that sound to you, Barry? I'm telling you, this is what my sources are discussing with me.
Well, comparing it to some recent events that took place in the United States Congress when a resolution was approved by the House, thank God, both Democrats and Republicans, saying that Israel is not a racist or apartheid state, the House of Representatives voted 412 to 9. But who were the 9? The 9 were all part of a squad of those who are anti-Israel and very anti-Semitic. And if this develops in the next Democratic convention that takes place in Chicago, and this anti-Israel sentiment is watered like a garden to grow up with a potential Newsom-Obama coming back or coming to the White House, it's going to be very serious for Israel. And I think that we will see a leftist agenda that has been going on under the Biden administration only increase. And at some point, I think there's going to be a break in the relationship between Israel and the United States, and it will not spell well for the United States especially. This is going to be a big question, what happens in the upcoming elections, and it remains to be seen. But I know that from a perspective certainly of the Orthodox Jewish community in the United States and in Israel, as well as the ultra-Orthodox, are probably the biggest friends of President Donald Trump from the Jewish community globally, not just in Israel, but also in the United States. Because we can't forget that he was the only president that actually acted, not in words, but in actions, about moving the capital back to Jerusalem. Although Congress had approved that back under President Clinton's administration, it took President Donald Trump to be like a Cyrus and to actually move the embassy, even under threat of the Palestinian Arab community, the Palestinian Authority, and that was just a trickle of opposition. In the end, it remains that Jerusalem is the eternal Jewish capital here in the state of Israel. So I think there's a lot to be said, and I think we're about to start seeing the pace pick up as to who's going to be running. And it'll be interesting to see what develops under the Democratic National Convention. I'm not sure when it's going to take place, but yeah. Chicago, I'll never forget, the Bible teacher Derek Prince once said the spirit and principality that controls Chicago is a spirit of violence. And he said that 40 years ago. And so I still see that as prevalent today.
It is prevalent today. And speaking of violence, I want to talk about the millions of illegals. And by the way, we believe that we might have as many as 4,000 terrorists that have been able to make it through the border in the United States because we have no territorial integrity. After years of pressure on the governor of Texas, he finally approved a solution. If he can't build a wall, he can at least build a barrier, erecting a barrier in the rivers that are connecting the cartels to Texas. And oddly enough, Barry, the biggest complaints coming from the government of Mexico. And this is almost like something out of Babylon B. Because the government in Mexico obviously is representing the financial interests of the cartel families who have their shell corporations, no doubt like Hunter Biden, and they prop up and are involved with government. And so they can't traffic the human trafficking. They can't get the fentanyl across. They can't give safe passage to these foreign regimes that want to break in. So Mexico is actually lodging a protest. Can you believe that actually putting a border up with another country would be protested by the other country? But that's the nature of the globalist and Marxist spirit. What is yours is mine, and what is mine is mine. And you've got 54 seconds. Why don't you bring us to land the plane here, Barry?
Well, actually, it's so true that it's tragic, actually. It's the Foreign Relations Secretary, Alicia Bárcena, as yet unconfirmed by the Mexican Senate, who sent a letter to the United States back in June decrying the move of putting these water buoys to keep illegal immigrants from coming over. And she was saying, we're sending a special mission to make sure that those buoys aren't on Mexican territory. Well, of course they're going to complain, because this would ruin a part of the free-flowing Mexican drug trade, killing the youth and people across America with fentanyl, which comes from China and from other nations in South America. So this would stop the killing off of many thousands of people, and it's no surprise. And I just wonder sometimes, leading up to this Democratic National Convention and the elections, and this I'm just laying out for you, Brother Lance, I just wonder how much of that dark money doesn't go being filtered into the U.S. elections by the Mexican drug cartels. And so that is a very special point that one day we must investigate.
Boy, you're making a great point, Barry. You know, I just found out today that Biden has $2 billion of money coming from really unknown and international sources to make sure he stays in office. So your point is actually confirmed as of today. We're going to be back again next week with a prophetic analysis of current events. Barry Segal and Lance Wallnau with Prophetic Convergence. Hey, let's take a moment right here and talk about something. You know, these programs are actually paid for by sponsors. And so the one thing that I always do is try to pick the sponsors that have the greatest value. Those are the ones that I myself believe in. Now, the Birch Gold Group is one of those key sponsors, and I'll tell you why. The economy is the area that I'm the most concerned about in terms of instability in the future. Do you know that right now, China and Russia and India is meeting with Saudi Arabians and South Africans to create an alternative economy, to basically crush the dollar? This is going to have a massive effect on the stock market, on real estate. It'll be a real shaking. But you don't have to be shaken, because there's a way you can protect your retirement, your 401ks, your IRAs, by connecting them in with gold. Gold is unique in history in that it's a place of stored value. In fact, those BRICS nations of Brazil and Russia, India and China, they're going to be backing themselves with, guess what? Gold. So be smart. I want you to go to lancewallnau.com/birch and get a free information kit. Get knowledge, act quickly, don't wait. And they're going to be able to help you make a great decision on what to do. Remember, that information is free with no strings attached. Do it now, lancewallnau.com/birch.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.